Greetings, everyone. So in this video, I want to pick up talking about 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, which is kind of building off of the last video I made. Well, remember, the context of Romans chapter 12 here concerns grace gifts according to a parted measure of faith of each. Of each. This word here, hekestos, 1538, is found in Ephesians 4:16. Hekestos, of each individual part. So again, the word each here is parsed exactly the same as in Romans 12:3. It's of each according to the inworking, which is the grace of God for the dwell building of the body, according to gifts. So the point being is that here again, like I talked about in that video, according to the measure of the faithing of each is the faith that each one has, which not all have the same faith. Which now brings us to 1 Corinthians 12:9, where people interpret this verse as if faith is one of the allocated grace gifts, but this is not what this is saying. Note that the word ulterior here is different from another up here. This adjective here, allos, defines things that are others of a similar kind. Ulterior defines others of a different kind. So this is referring to the ulterior one of the faithing, who has a different kind of faith. Not all have the same faith. I talked about it in the last video. So what we have to do is we have to divide verse 9 in half, according to the conclusion of verse 8. But to another, the word of knowledge according to the same Spirit, but ulterior faithing in the same Spirit. It's not referring to faith as a grace itself. And then, of course, the second part, Paul then names the grace gift of healing. But to another, the grace of healing in the same Spirit, but to another, the inworking ability of powers, but to another, but to another, but to another. Okay, so if this verse was describing faith as one of the allocations that some have and others don't, we have a problem, because there are no grace gifts outside of faithing. If some had faith and some didn't, which Paul concludes down here in verse 30, not all have grace gifts of healing, not all are teachers, not all speak tongues. That would mean some would have faith and others wouldn't. So again, this is not what the verse is saying. Romans 12:3 is not saying that God is dealing out different faith to different people. Watch my last video. And neither does Ephesians 2:8, because the pronoun this, not out of you, is not modifying the word faith. Faith is in the feminine gender. This is in the neuter. A neuter pronoun cannot modify a feminine noun. So for in grace, in the ability and inworking of God, which is the gift, you are having been saved through faith, which is out of us. Faith is not a gift. Faith is our response to hearing the word, or not. We take grace and apostleship into below hearing of faithing, which King James translates this as obedience to the faith. So faith unlocks the grace. Romans 5:1. We are justified out of faithing, our faith, our response, or not, to the hearing of the talk of God, through whom we have had the access also in faith into grace. So Romans 10:17, I think. Consequently, the faithing comes out of the hearing. So faith is our response initially. While I'm at it, note that the word faith here in the devar with the E on the end is always the verb form. Okay, and this verb, a verb is not a thing. It's an action. Faith here is not a gift. This is pisteuo in the Greek. And here, the verb pisteuo, you, as you faith, belongs to you. And this is parsed in what's called the active voice, which represents the subject, okay, the one who is faithing, as the doer or the performer of the action. To faith, not the recipient of a gift. We're here then in John chapter 4, verse 21, when Jesus tells the woman, faith in me, this is the verb. It's in the active voice imperative mood. So again, the active voice represents the subject, the one being told to faith, as the doer or the performer of the action, not a recipient of a gift. Then the imperative mood of the same verb, to faith, expresses a direct order or a command toward the hearer, that they perform a certain action, which is to faith, not receive a gift. So faith, according to the verb form, is not a gift. It's never a gift. It's our response. Interpreting Ephesians 2:8 as if faith is a gift is wrong. We have to understand the syntax of the words, where each according to his kind of faith is the parted measure of faithing of each. This is not God dealing out faith to you and to this one all differently. It's not what this verse is saying. And then again, neither is 1 Corinthians 12:9 saying that faith is a grace allocation of a gift, which is ulterior, where whatever translation that you're using, if it's not the Devar, you're not going to see the difference between heteros and allos. So it's just simply talking about the kind of faith of the ulterior one who is faithing in the same spirit, who has different grace allocated gifts than others, because not all have the same gifts. God mixes up the body, each according to the measure of their faith, is the context. Thanks for watching, and God bless.